Alright then, so I'm back for a little bit more 7DRL play. And this time we've got this game here. And we're just going to set this basically up here, so Windows Capture, we'll go to Fictional Rogue. Expand this for you guys to see. I'll note that these games here basically playing, they're like very, very small windows, so I have to sort of like, expand the windows so you guys basically can see them. But anyhow, Fictional Rogue by Tritax. Fictional Rogue attempts to blend fiction and flavor text with conventional roguelike gameplay. A simple yet fairly extensible context-free grammar controls all aspects. Grammar controls all aspects of the text display by game, allowing a highly customizable in-game narrative. Alright, so, that probably doesn't really tell you much about this game here, but, Fictional Rogue here was basically a game that, I was very, interested in sort of, the concept of basically how it looked, but at the same time, I thought it was basically so lacking that there's no way I could possibly, put it up as a spotlight, so let's jump into it and see what it's basically all about. So, you'll note that basically, basically we're stereotypic character here. There's basically a couple monsters around us. Let's see if we can basically survive these monsters. So, we'll go here. I don't want to get hit, so let's just try and wait. We'll attack this monster here. Note by these, Ks are monsters, and I believe, all the enemies in this game are basically all Ks, so that's what they are. We might just die here, but okay, we survived. Alright, so we're just gonna rest here a little bit. Oh, if you just rest, you just heal up, our HP. So, as you see at the top, right there, basically HP 4 again. Let's just explore around here a little bit, so we can see, what aspects of this gameplay are basically, on display here, so to speak. There's another monster to kill. Let's kill it. Now, just looking at this, you can probably think this is very, very standard, rogue play. Basically, you go room to room, basically killing everything that basically pops up. A little bit differently, basically starting out, but, otherwise, basically, it doesn't appear to be anything too interesting, I guess, to you guys. There's an arcade, we'll kill it. Uh-oh. Okay, we lucked out there and killed those guys easily enough. Alright, so that's basically it for this first level. Now, I'll note that basically, playing this first level, that basically, sums up the sort of gameplay experience of this game. But if you basically look at how these basic rooms basically are sort of set up here, you'll notice that there's basically lots of little doodads on them, and each one basically has a sort of name to them. So basically, right now we're floor 1 mess hall right here, and if I go over here, we're basically floor 1 damp room, and floor 1 antechamber. Each one of these rooms basically has a name to it, and I thought that's a very sort of interesting aspect that you don't really see a lot with roguelikes basically at all. Most roguelikes basically they just have a bunch of empty rooms or caverns and stuff like that, and you don't really see any specific names basically for them, unless there's a specific vault being put in them. But this rogue game here, it basically went out of its way basically to have each and every single one of these rooms basically named with a different name. And they can all be sparring room here, sparring room right there, dining hall right here, storage. You can have rooms that basically have the same name. So it basically sort of lets itself being very similar to what can I say about it? There's basically games that you basically explore around going room to room, basically survival collecting stuff type of games. I forget their names basically right now, but essentially, like, you're going like room to room, basically, like, trying to get, like, find like certain rooms, like, kitchen, basically, like, get food, and like, you go to like the like weapon armory to like, get weapons and stuff like that. And I thought this was like, interesting concept, because I can see like this sort of like, aspect of like this like sort of like rule like gameplay here being tied into like, sort of like, quest type events for like a rule like type type of game based to play. For example, perhaps like I have like a dungeon here, and like you're going to say like through like a fortress like goblins, and your goal is basically to find like the like what you call it. Your goal is basically to find like the storage rooms inside this goblin fortress. So you'd be looking for like these storage rooms like this, and inside one of these storage rooms you'll basically find a crate like that like has like the quest objective it has to basically find. So I can see like you can have like these sort of like random like quests like pop up, and they could be sort of like derived from like the different like rooms basically you could like basically play with. So I thought this was like a very interesting like sort of like concept that like even though like the gameplay itself is not very satisfactory, this is like an interesting concept in itself that I think like was worth promoting. So that's basically why I wanted to like play this game here. By the way, you can also see like also do this on the ground. So you have like a pile of bones right here. You have like a crate here. There's basically a statue here, and it's like mess hall. Another crate right there. And we have like an altar here in a dining hall. There's a statue right there. There's a barrel right there. There's like a bed right there in a musty library for some reason. Pile of bones. A chest. A table. So I looked at like the idea of like having like sort of like doodads in the background. That is actually something that has been explored. I believe Stone Shard was actually a good recent example of like a recent traditional roguelike that basically has like things in the background that sort of like take up space in the room, but whatever. But yeah, I thought that was like sort of an interesting concept to basically like show you guys. So that's basically like the main draw for like playing this game, is just to sort of show off like this like name of like the different rooms. Anyhow, let's just go to like the next level here, I guess, so I can basically show off a little more of the game. So we'll go up the stairs here. You see a staircase leading further down to the darkness, so let's go down. There's immediately a couple of caves here to fight, so let's fight them. And I looked at like these caves are basically all called monsters, so they're not kobolds or anything like that. Now, I'll note by the way, like as you can basically see, there's basically only like one type of monster so far, and unfortunately, this game doesn't really appear to be finished, because that's basically it. Just like, one type of monster you basically fight the entire time. Okay. You will eventually find like, bigger caves, but, you'll realize that like quite quickly that like, all the bigger cave basically means there's basically like, just a bigger monster. So, you're just fighting monsters. That's it. There's nothing like special about these monsters or anything else. You just like, go in. The thing about this game is like, what's really interesting is like the sort of like having like the text for like each room, so you basically see like what room you're basically in. But once you like you realize like that's basically all like, this like, basically has. It's like nothing really else to it. Like you're like there'd be nothing else to this game. It's just like I go in, I pulverize monsters, I go down a level. I go in, I pulverize some more monsters, I go down a level. And you can see like how you can like sort of like get drawn into like a sort of like monotonous like gameplay here, because that's literally all it is. You're just like you hit monster, you run away. You hit monster, you run away. And I die because like sometimes these guys will eventually like just kill you. But anyhow, this is basically like Fictional Rogue, and I basically died in a dining hall of like this like place we're basically running through. What's really interesting, as I said about this game, is basically sort of naming references for each individual room. And, I want to emphasize this. The idea of basically having, like, elements like this being added to your roguelikes is actually a fairly, like, novel idea that hasn't really been explored. And I could imagine, like, as as I said, you have, like, sort of, like, quests, basically, so, like, you have to basically go, like, look in a certain room for, like, a quest. But there's other stuff you can basically, like, also think about as well for, like, these, like, sort of naming conventions. You could have, like, basically have it so, like, if you're in a dining hall, you're more likely basically to find, like, food in, like, a sort of, like, roguelike area. Or perhaps basically, like, you're on a quest basically to, like, well, not like a quest, but, you're basically like playing a game like say Alien RL. They have like sort of like levels, basically have like different levels having like different stuff, but imagine instead of having like a level basically like being like dedicated to like medical research and stuff like that, you could have like basically like a base level, for example, of like a game, and one of those rooms is basically gonna be like a medical room, and if you basically take some time basically like looking around at medical room, you're gonna basically find like medical supplies for yourself. So there's basically like intrinsic that could be like basically like borrowed from this game like implemented into like a proper roguelike. So yeah, I very much like this idea for like the concept basically had, even though it wasn't that like much of anything really to say. There's like bigger case basically in this game, but there's like nothing really to say about it besides that. So that's Fictional Rogue. I hope you guys basically like enjoyed like a quick like run through it. I could play it like more, trying to show off the big Ks, but I don't think I'm gonna be bothered. It is what it is. Hope you guys basically enjoyed it, and like take care.